He was sleeping peacefully for the first time in a while since all this hell started on Earth. Flashes of what he did yesterday with Na-Yeon were the only thing on his mind. His feelings were a mess, but the odd thing was he didn't seem to feel regret or anger that it had happened. Cheong-san was more surprised than anything by that response as he opened his eyes to the blinding rays of the sun coming through the window. The room was covered in bright light and he wondered how he had managed to sleep in so carefree. He could feel Na-Yeon's small breaths on his neck and turned to look at her sleeping blissfully in his grasp. She was buried in the crook of his neck, most of her form draped over him as her arm wrapped around him and his arm did the same. They were still naked under the blanket they had covered themselves in. He felt so calm and he wanted nothing more than to find peace in this storage room. He moved slowly so as to not wake her up as he turned to face her. She looked so rested, so peacefully, something that he had never seen before. She grabbed his arm with a strength that betrayed her thin fragile arms, which brought a smile to his face. Cheong-san nervously reached out, parting some of the hair that was covering her face. After parting the hair, his hand remained placed on her cheek and stroked it lightly. His fingers traced all over her face and traced over her lips. Those were the lips that had taken his proper first kiss. Anjo had kissed him back when they were kids as a joke, but he doubted that counted. She was his real first one. He was hers. That was still baffling him, that she had let him be her first kiss, let alone be her very first and her his. He could still picture it like a dream, coming and going in flashes. He doubted he would ever be able to forget it, forget her. He doubted he would want to. In those moments and this one, it felt as if everything and everyone faded away and it was just the two of them. Na-Yeon had been sleeping peacefully before in a dream that seemed miles from anything that she could have imagined. She had been laughing and exchanging stories with her mother in the kitchen whilst her father and Cheong-san. He had been outside with her father on the grill while laughing with her dad. Once in a while, they would throw glances at each other and then get teased by her parents for it. She felt herself wake up, but she so desperately wanted to return to those dreams of an alternate reality. When her eyes opened, she looked at Cheong-san. He was just staring at her as he stroked her hair and her cheek. His eyes met hers and then he went back to his task. She just sighed, ignoring the grunts and growls from the zombies outside that seemed like distant whispers. "Morning," Cheong-san said, not looking at her but stroking her hair. "How did you sleep?" She looked at him. Was he really asking how she was? Na-Yeon was more surprised till she realized how long she had been taking to answer the question. As she looked up and saw him staring at her waiting for her answer. "I'm good. I haven't slept like that in a long time." He just nodded at her answer. He could tell she had slept better just by the small smile that she was trying to hide, which was making it difficult to hide his own. She snuggled up further into him, taking a deep breath. "You need a bath." That seemed to break the tension as he laughed for a bit and she soon joined him. "The both of us need one." She lightly hit his chest. "That's rude to say to a lady," she said with a playful pout, unknowingly spurring memories with Cheong-san of his mother whenever he treated Anjo just like any other boy. He stopped stroking her cheek as she just held his hand there on her face, looking into his eyes as if searching for something. Their blissful morning was interrupted by some distant growling of zombies that made Cheong-san perk up as he sat up in their makeshift bed. Na-Yeon felt robbed of her warmth because Git had made a rather good heater. She sat up next to him, hiding her exposed chest underneath the blanket. She knew she didn't need to. After all, he had already seen her. Her hand met his shoulder and there was no flinch at all as she ran her hand up and down his back. Still shocked at the bruising that wall on him, now accompanied by some marks of her own on his body. Last night had just been an avalanche of emotions for the both of them and they hadn't known when they had settled. She stood up, leaving Cheong-san to just look up at her as she let the blanket fall from her form. Among these donations, She knew they had to be something. It didn't take her long to find something close to it. Medical supplies. As she sat herself down on the blanket crawling back in it next to Cheong-san, she opened the packets and found some ice pads. The pictures on the box of athletes running and using this for pain were enough instruction. She took out the first recovery ice pad and pastured it on Cheong-san's back as he let out an uncomfortable grunt but didn't make a move to stop her. There were a bunch of them and she proceeded to place them all over his back. As she moved to the front, their eyes met each other and they continued to just stare at each other as she worked on him. It wasn't long before she was done applying all of the recovery pads and could already see some form of relief on Cheong-san's face. At least she had been useful, even if she knew he could have done it easily himself. He had let her do it. There was no malice in those eyes, no anger or disgust. Maybe confusion, but that wasn't that bad as she felt the same. Listen, as much as I would like to stay with here all day, we have to go. The others need us. She knew that this was true. She had escaped to her own personal heaven for a while, but she needed to remind herself that she was currently walking in hell and others needed their salvation, but mostly his. She wondered how Cheong-san would act once they were all back together. Would he simply get some distance between the two of them and pretend as if this never happened? She didn't like that idea. That much she could tell by how it made her stomach drop. Cheong-san? She asked, gaining his attention. What happens now? She asked, and he looked away for a moment and she felt her heart drop. She knew that it had only been a spur of the moment thing acted on by feelings that were still nothing but a spark, but she hoped it had meant something. Before she could delve deeper into a rabbit hole of her emotions, she felt the press of lips on her. It stunned her for a moment, but she soon relaxed into the kiss, hooking her arms around his neck. They pulled each other close in their frenzied kissing before quickly breaking apart and resting their foreheads against each other. A small smile formed on her face as she closed her eyes. She knew now that even with all that was going to happen, something had definitely changed between the two of them. She felt a gentle kiss on her forehead before he pulled her closer, resting his chin on top of her head. Cheong-san knew that now he had another person to protect, which didn't ease his worries. He knew he could control things in her, but out there everything was the roll of a dice. His feelings for Na-Yeon were still murky. He still hated what she had done to his best friend, but now a part of him wanted to protect her and never see her cry as she had before. It was odd and confusing. He knew if he focused on it he would just get stuck in a loop thinking about what was right and wrong. He didn't want to let what had happened to stop him from experiencing something new. After all, with how the world was going, these might very well be his last days. They could only fight and dodge for so long before they made a mistake that cost them their lives. He held Na-Yeon tighter. He wanted to get everyone out of here, even if it was the last thing that he did. Let's go. He felt her nod in his chest. As his promised himself in his head, I will protect you.